and welcome to the Daily Scripture Podcast. My name is Jerome Lavelle, and I hope that you are having a splendid day today. Today we will be looking at 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 1 through 5. Brothers and sisters, thus should one regard us, as servants of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. Now it is, of course, required of stewards that they be found trustworthy. It does not concern me in the least that I be judged by you or any human tribunal. I do not even pass judgment on myself. I am not conscious of anything against me, but I do not thereby stand acquitted. The one who judges me is the Lord. Therefore, do not make any judgment before the appointed time, until the Lord comes. For he will bring to light what is hidden in darkness, and will manifest the motives of our hearts. And then everyone will receive praise from God. Today, in the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians, verses 1 through 5, we hear Paul clarifying for this community his and other teachers' position and purpose. The first line of the passage states that very clearly. He says, "Regard us as servants of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God." Here using the wonderful phrases, servants of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. What a wonderful way for Paul to describe himself and other teachers and evangelists, including Peter and the other disciples. Servants and stewards. Well, let's look at the definitions of these two words. I find under servant a person who performs duties for others, a devoted and helpful follower or supporter. I think what Paul is saying to the Corinthians is that he is that servant for them in their journey and that servant to Christ. His role is to be devoted to the task of tirelessly serving Christ. And by the way he is interacting with and leading the Corinthians, he is modeling being that servant. Paul, certainly among all the disciples, was God's devoted servant. During difficult situations and personal hardships in his life, he confidently tells the Corinthians, "The one who judges me is the Lord." Now let's look at the word steward. I find under steward definition a person responsible for the management and care of something that's been entrusted to them. The implication being something precious and or of great value. In today's scripture, Paul calls himself a steward of the mysteries of God. These are the good news. Christ crucified, his word, the fulfillment of God's promises to mankind, the mysteries of God. I think Paul is saying that those who have knowledge of these mysteries are called to steward that gift, as he and others did in his time. And we and ours are called to today. We do this in our words, in our actions, in our attitudes, our behaviors, in the way we live our lives, in our speech, in our kindness, in our love. Today, in his letter to the Corinthians, Paul describes himself as a servant of God and a steward of his mysteries. I think it's fair to say that Paul, in the way he lived his life, was truly those things. He encourages in the scriptures today the Corinthians to the same, stewardship and service. And I think he encourages us in a like manner. He wants us, and he shows us in the pages of this scripture, to be the best servant and the best steward that we can be. Thank you for joining the Daily Scripture Podcast. My name is Jerome Lavelle, and remember, our word of the day is a servant to Christ and a steward to God's mysteries. Until next time, be well and be blessed.